the clinic, as a case. Because there were, I think, 2 items on the agenda, and the meeting was over an hour because of that. And it really wasn't that unusual, there were just a lot of questions.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is noon, so we are going to go ahead and begin our instructional program for this afternoon. Today's program is on Initiative 433 concerning the minimum wage. And if you are interested, on the table as you came in, we have our informational pamphlet that the Secretary of State office sent us. We thank Ramona Thomas for delivering those to us. She's our county clerk. And these were put out by Robert Ebnet, our Nebraska Secretary of State. And they have information for both Initiative 432, the voter ID, and the program that we are having today, Initiative 433, the minimum wage. So if you have yours from last week, or if you picked one up on the table, and please feel free to go over and get one. We have more of those on the table for you today. The information for Initiative Measure 433 is towards the back. All right, today before we begin, I would like to say that I am Elaine Landwehr. I am one of the League of Women Voter of Hastings members. I am co-chair of the Candidate Forum Committee, and I will be doing the introductions today. I'd like to thank the YWCA of Adams County for allowing us to meet here in this nice facility, and I would like to thank the Hastings Public Access Channel for recording this, so it will be on the Hastings Public Access Channel. And they also post those to YouTube, so if you will go to their website, you can see that. I would like to say that the League of Women Voters is a political organization. It is made up of women and men who study and take action on political issues. The League is nonpartisan. It does not support or oppose candidates. The League of Women Voters has been educating voters for over 100 years because it believes that a democratic government depends upon the informed and active participation of its citizens. So we'll move right on to our first speaker. We have Jackie Cranson. She and her husband, Matt, are owners of a small business here in Hastings. It is called Small Town Famous. They have one in Hastings and in Grand Island. It's a screen print and embroider business. They've done this for 12 years. And prior to that, Jackie graduated from the law school at UNL. And so we would like Jackie to come up and share with us information about the minimum wage and raising that and how it may affect a small hometown business. So Jackie Cranson.
All right. Like she said, my name is Jackie Cranson, and my husband and I own Small Town Famous. We screen print, embroider, and then we also have a boutique in the front half of our store. And I am a big advocate of paying people fair wages. Our employees are down for, our cashier, basically our cashier in the front of the store, to our manufacturing employees. All of our full-time employees, I believe, are $18 an hour. A lot of our girls are 20, 22. We also offer a matching 401k and a few other, paid vacations, holidays. And I think sometimes there's a misconception that if you raise the wages that these businesses are not going to make it. It started just my husband and I slowly grew, and we don't have a problem. Last year, our business sold just right at $1 million, which is kind of crazy for people don't believe that, I think, in Hastings, but we do. And my husband and I, with paying our employees, we're up to 19 now. A lot of them are part-time. Our part-time people make $15 an hour. And we are able, my husband and I easily took home a 6-figure income with our business, still paying our employees $18 plus an hour. One of the things with the minimum wage, I worried a little bit, you know, we always paid well, even before COVID, we were around $15 an hour, and I was like, well, crap, now you got Walmart. Like, we took pride in the fact that Walmart, this big corporation in Hastings, was paying $11 an hour, and we were at 15, and then COVID hit, and they started putting these signs up that, oh, $15 an hour, and I was like, well, what are we gonna do now? Like, this is our competitive advantage, we're better than Walmart. But it really hasn't. I mean, we raised our wage a little more, and now I've noticed over time, those signs at Walmart have slowly trickled down back to some of them I've seen $11, $12 an hour, which is kind of a joke, and we've continued to raise our wages, and we continue to do really well, and we have no problem with money. We're actually hoping to buy the old Dollar General building downtown. We're gonna put in a bid for that next month, and we continue to grow. So for me, I don't see the issue. It makes me really happy to know that my employees can pay their way in life. One of our first full-time employees had lived in an apartment for about 10 years and worked at a daycare before, and she was able to buy her first house last year. So, I mean, we take just as much as like the money coming in for us or what we do, we take just as much pride, and we get just as excited about seeing those accomplishments for our employees. So that's kind of our stance on raising the wages. So we definitely think that raising the wages would be a good thing.
Wow.
So.
Questions?
Jackie, I'm just curious, I know you probably talk with other businesses. Do you think that other small town businesses or small size businesses feel the same way, or do you feel like, if you're comfortable speaking?
Yeah, no, and I mean, some do, some don't. A lot of people, you know, the big...
Jackie, would you repeat the question for the camera?
She had asked that, do sometimes other businesses in small towns feel like they can compete and they can have the higher wages and do as well? And I would say some do, some don't. A lot of the pushback, even when I say, well, we pay whatever, people say, well, your job looks cool. It's like, no, it's a manufacturing job. It's not anything that's glamorous. It looks cool when you do one t-shirt, but it's after you're there for 2 hours, you know that it's not exciting. And the other thing, they're like, well, we can't do that here. It's not true. Like, I disagree with it. Like, raise your prices on things, or find other ways. Like, I think if you can't pay your employees a living wage, then your business model sucks and you shouldn't be in business. And I think what we've seen even with the pandemic, with employee shortages, even in Hastings, we don't have an employee shortage. I get really frustrated when I see people say, there's not help anymore. I'm like, oh, pay your employees better, treat them better, and you'll have people. We have way more applicants. Every time we post, it's hard for me because I hate telling people no, and I hate not being able to hire everyone, but we have tons of applicants every time that we post a job. And so I think if you want to have a business and you want to do well, pay your employees well, and you'll continue to make more money and bring more people in. And so I would say the people that say they can't compete, it's because their business model sucks.
Thank you.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jackie, for coming and speaking to us today.
Yes.
So we had a point of view from a small business owner.
Thank you. Sorry I was stay. We're giving out free t-shirts because Northwest and St. Cecilia made it to the championship. So I got to go hand out shirts. I didn't know I was going to go on until yesterday. But yes, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kate Wolf, and she will also be speaking on the minimum wage. And Kate Wolf is the campaign manager for Raise the Wage Nebraska. It's a statewide coalition consisting of over 25 organizations and individuals who have put forward ballot initiative 433. Kate lives in Lincoln and has managed more than 24 political campaigns. In addition to Kate's campaign consulting business, she has spent 12 years working in the Nebraska legislature as an aide to 3 different state senators. She has 4 children, 2 cats, and 1 golden retriever. So, Kate Wolf, would you please come up now?
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I grew up in Holdridge, so I came to Hastings for braces, and so I have a soft spot in my heart for Hastings my whole life and love coming back here and reliving those memories. 1 year ago, a group of Nebraskans came together to put forward a petition initiative to place an increase in the minimum wage on the ballot. And that is a huge endeavor. As I'm sure that you understand, we have to go around and qualify more than 38 counties and get those signatures, as well as meeting a gross number of signatures. We're very excited in July to turn in our petitions that contained over 160,000 signatures. We got a signature, at least one signature from every county in Nebraska. And I think that that said a lot about the need to put this to the voters. People are feeling the stagnation of wages in comparison to the continuing increase in price of groceries and gas and housing. And they see it and they feel it in their communities and in their families. So we have 25 organizations, as it was mentioned, as a part of our coalition, that are working together to now carry the message to the voters. And the campaign is an incredible part of that to make sure that people are informed. So this forum to do that is, I think, very, very helpful. I'm a big advocate for voting. This is why I enjoy having one foot in politics and one in policy in my life. And in addition to our coalition, we've also had like 300 or more businesses sign on to support the ballot initiative, and they again are from all across Nebraska as well. The reasons why it is important that we have this initiative for the people to vote on and for the people to vote in support of it is because people earning minimum wage are making less than $19,000 a year. And it's wrong that Nebraska parents who work full-time don't make enough to get by. They often have to choose between buying groceries or paying rent, buying clothes, an extra new pair of shoes for the kids. And that is what this is really about. It's about the people that are living on the margins and that are struggling, but we know work hard. They're working as classroom aides, healthcare aides, wait staff, skilled assembly line workers. And we want to ensure that hard work is rewarded. That is definitely a philosophy of Nebraskans. There are some myths that you'll hear, and we hear it sometimes from our opponents, about who will benefit from the minimum wage. We have statistical data that comes from the Economic Policy Institute and reports from an organization called the National Employment Law Policy Center that tell us that 75% of the people who will benefit are age 20 and over in Nebraska that are earning less than $15 an hour. Thousands of Nebraskans will benefit. And in addition to those that we know that are adults, 61% of the people who will benefit are women. This goes a long way towards closing the wage gap that has affected women forever, really, right? And women have fallen further behind and the wage gap continues to grow. And I think in the pandemic, as we saw many women have to choose to leave the workforce, they're gonna fall further behind and the wage gap, we could see a consequence of that growing. And so ensuring that we keep wages in step with rising costs so that women can feed their children and take care of themselves is incredibly important. Other things that we know about the people who are benefit, 43% have attended college. And that includes many who have graduated with a post-secondary degree that are still earning less than $15 an hour. 43% live in rural Nebraska. This is not just a Lincoln and Omaha issue. We know that it affects people in every corner of our state. And 21% are parents. We know that child poverty would immediately decline when Nebraska's minimum wage is increased. And we also know that helping lift individuals out of poverty promotes positive outcomes for children and families. You also hear that raising the minimum wage has a negative effect on the economy. Again, all we have to do is look to the numbers, and we have the numbers. In 2014, a similar ballot initiative was put before the voters, and the voters of Nebraska advanced that. What we saw from 2014 to full implementation in 2016 was a decrease in the unemployment rate and net gains in the total number of people employed in the workforce, the total number of new business starts, and the total number of Nebraska business establishments. Those numbers are hard numbers. You can't anecdotal evidence and fears and those sorts of things that you're often going to hear are not factual. And in Nebraska, a year later after, we saw the same positive outcomes and gains that were occurring from that. Okay, it's not just a Nebraska thing. In recent years, both Missouri and Arkansas has increased their minimum wage, and they saw very similar statistics. So we definitely know that the policies that increase the minimum wage accomplish exactly what they set out to do. They benefit families, children, workers, and our economy. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Short and sweet. I should remember, but tell me more about the 2014 initiative.
Right, so at the time, Nebraska was at the federal minimum wage, $7.25, $7.25, and they put forward a ballot initiative to gradually increase it to $9 an hour, what it is today. And so there was, I think, an increase in 2015, full implementation to $9 an hour in 2016.
Okay, I just didn't remember.
Yep.
And that came from the unicameral?
That was a ballot initiative.
It was a ballot.
It was a ballot initiative then as well, yeah. The legislature has taken up bills to increase the minimum wage, the standard minimum wage as well as tip minimum wage, and they have failed to succeed in the legislature. And, working in the legislature for 12 years, it's amazing to be part of the nation's only unicameral in the whole country. And I think as Nebraskans, we take great pride in that. And what they often say is that the people are the second house. And the initiative process is sacred in Nebraska. And I think that we don't get any closer to direct democracy than what we see when we put these issues forward from a petition initiative to a ballot initiative. And so I think that Nebraskans really get a great opportunity to weigh in on these issues in these instances.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question. In the section 48-1203, it says $9 per hour through December 31st, 2022, that ends on December 31st.
Oh. So
if this doesn't pass, what happens? Do we continue with $9 an hour? Do we go back with the federal at $7.25 an hour? What happens if this does not pass?
Short answer is that it will remain at $9 an hour. And so, as you've probably seen in the ballot language, it does incrementally gradually and responsibly increase just $1.50 a year until we reach $15 an hour by 2026. I forgot to mention that at the top, which I usually do. So it's just incremental changes. And that is, I think, an important part of allowing our Nebraska businesses to be able to make those adjustments gradually instead of one big leap. Yeah, I think there was a question in the back.
Yes, would you address those workers who live on tips, such as servers in restaurants? Is there anything in this initiative or thoughts for the future?
I'm not an expert on that. I know just a little bit. And one thing to note is that this does not directly address the tipped minimum wage, which I think is $2.43 an hour, okay? But one thing that it will affect, when a tipped worker finishes their week, if their average pay with tips does not equal the statutory minimum wage of $9 an hour, their employer has to close that gap, okay? And so this will help them in that way, that closing that gap, the threshold would be a little bit higher as well. So they do benefit while that tip minimum wage still remains very low. Any other questions?
Yeah. Yes. In the initiative in 48-1203, it says that after December 31st, 2026, that the increase will go with the consumer price index for the urban consumers. And so can you explain, consumer price index, I understand, but what is consumer price index
for all urban consumers.
Wow.
I'm not an expert on that part of the statutory change, other than what I know is that it will be adjusted once we hit $15 an hour in 2026. Going forward, it will automatically be tied to cost of living increases, so that we don't have to have those battles in the legislature over what the minimum wage should be, and we don't have to go and spend a lot of money to put these issues back on the ballot. We will just be able to hopefully keep wages in check with cost of living increases.
What is urban is the question.
Right. Okay, so my next question is, it says it's going to raise concerning the consumer price index for all urban consumers for the Midwest region, or its successor index. Does that mean that they could change, the legislature could change the index that would be used? It says, or its successor index as published by the U.S. Department of Labor or its successor agency. So I guess my wonder is, what could they change the index to be? And if the U.S. Department of Labor isn't the agency, what other agency could it be? Or are they just putting that in there to just, in case something changes, it will already be in there?
Yeah, so that is all relative to the measures, right, and the numbers. So for example, one thing that they're looking at, and just in the month of September, the CPI is going to have an impact on Social Security income, okay? Social Security income is something that increases relevant to the CPI, and they take a figure in time in September based on third quarter, blah, 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 right? This is way out of my level of expertise. I know, just a little bit. So that language and about urban, it's not only affecting urban, but it's the marker, right? It's the marker of what has the impact of inflation been. Where will we look? Where will we measure that figure of what the CPI index of annual inflation is. So it would be similar, I'm assuming, and a lot of the hypotheticals that you're putting forward would be, what if at some point they change the index and it's not the CPI any longer? And I think that there are different indexes depending on how things are measured that look at different needs. And so I think that it's just giving latitude for, if it changes in the future, it's going to be tied to whatever that specific measure is. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else?
I have something I should know. I keep asking questions about things that I should know. A ballot initiative cannot be vetoed, right? If it passes the...
Yes, it cannot be vetoed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't think so, but I wanted to make it clear.
And this is not a constitutional amendment.
It is not a constitutional amendment. It's all statutory.
Okay.
Thank you all very much for the discussion. I do have a few signs if anybody's interested in a sign for voting for Initiative 433. And just thank you for your time and encourage everybody to get out and vote by November 8th.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Oh,
joining
you know
us.
what? You might tell them that the State League is a part of the conference.
Yes, the State League of Women Voters is a coalition member of Raise the Wage Nebraska. We're glad to have their support.
I should have known.
All right, well, we thank both of our speakers for coming today. Kate Wolf from minimum wage for her help in trying to get information about this initiative, and for Jackie Cranston for giving us information on a perspective of a small business owner in Hastings and Grand Island. Just remember that we have these informational pamphlets in the back, and it does give information for both 432 and 433. When it starts, it explains what it used to read, what it used to look like, has all those lines crossed out, and then has the additions, so you'll know what it did look like and what is going to be changed. it actually does list arguments for and supporters, and then opponents. And I would like to read through the opponent information to make sure that we are actually broadcasting information for both sides. Opponents contend that the minimum wage was never meant to be a living wage, but an entry-level wage for young people or first-time workers. These wage increases are a 66.7% surge over 3 years and increase inflation. Most minimum wage jobs are with small businesses or franchises, and those owners cannot afford higher wages. This hits rural Nebraska harder where the cost of living is lower. This increase causes employers to raise prices for their product or service and pass those costs on to consumers. Increasing the wage every year will force businesses to step up their other salaries, which is also inflationary. A higher minimum wage forces companies to reduce their workforce and increase automation. This measure forces increases for tipped wage employees. Some small businesses will close because they can't afford the new mandatory wage. And so please, there are more of these if you'd like to take one for someone else, or make sure you have the information for both things, 432 and 433, that we will be voting on in November. So everyone, please get out there and vote.
Do you want to address any of those?
I could. I mean, would you like me to?
You sure? We have plenty of time for you to give a rebuttal.
Sure.
As League of Women Voters, we like to make sure we give both sides.
I understand, and I think that that's very important too, and it's an important part of the informative pamphlets that the secretary puts together. So, I think, some of the first things talking about that this was for young people an entry, wage, I had addressed by saying 75% of the people that will benefit are adults over the age of 20. And we know many parents are working multiple jobs at low wages to be able to get by, and that's very fact-based. The numbers are there. Something that I also forgot to mention was a lot of the reason the businesses have come in support. We heard Ms. Cranston talk a little bit about what it means to her business, but businesses know that the most expensive labor cost to them is turnover. Right? Retaining an employee and retaining a good, happy employee is one of the best things you can have. The number one dissatisfaction and reason for a person leaving a job is, guess what? Wages. Exactly. So people who, like Jackie, who talk about the importance of taking care of their employees. We just heard from a business owner in Omaha at the Secretary of State's hearing who said that they started a brewing company, and then the pandemic hit, and they had been paying their employees around $16 an hour and over. They had started out a little lower than that, and then realized they really needed to bump people up. And their employees, when they had to close during the pandemic, had to go take temporary employment elsewhere. But every single one of their employees returned when they were able to reopen. And I think that is huge. Then they don't have the training expense. Your employees know your customers, and they develop relationships, and that's what keeps your customers feeding back. The other thing that we know is that more money in people's pockets is more money spent in Main Street businesses. This is an economic driver. And it's unfortunate, but it's true, that the people who are living at the lower level of earnings spend 100% of the money they make. I have been that single parent before, raising my children and not making enough and having to work extra. My money, when I got a little extra, was not going to Wall Street. It was going to Main Street. And this, when we're talking about $2,100 more a year in the pocket of someone earning minimum wage right now with this increase, that's $2,100 translates to millions of dollars spent in businesses in Nebraska. And I think that's why after 2014 we got to see those positive economic gains, right? And I think that our economy and our businesses definitely benefit when people are earning a living wage. Yeah.
And you already addressed, but it says that the measure will force an increase in tipped wage employees, but you already said that's not part of it.
It doesn't increase tip minimum wage, but it increases closing that gap where someone's, tips don't get them to, if they worked 8 hours and no one tipped,
Right.
and they earned $3 an hour, you cannot let someone go home earning $3 an hour. So now that they close that gap up to $9 an hour, and this would do it in those incremental changes. So I think yes, it impacts, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
The statute says that the burden of proof shall be upon the employer. So I hope they read that. Does it ever get followed up? How do you know? How do you know that it doesn't carry any kind of punishment if they don't? It just says the burden of proof shall be upon the employer, that they get their compensation according to the.
Yeah, the legislature has addressed that in some bills, and I think some things that have passed where, with employers have a certain amount of time that they have to provide a pay stub. If they're not providing a pay stub, those things are in there. But just like a lot of things, you have to be the whistleblower. And unfortunately, it says the burden is on the employer, but really the burden is on the employee to speak up,
So someone said to me, there probably won't be a lot of people turn out because actually this increase the minimum wage is, quote, a slam dunk, because most people get more than the minimum wage now anyway. That's not what I heard you say.
No, that's very true. I mean, we know that this will impact 150,000 Nebraskans. I mean, and that is data that, comes right out of statistics from the Economic Policy Institute.
I just wanted you to say that.
I'm just sitting here thinking that it's interesting timing because of the fact that we keep saying that we're approaching a recession or in a recession. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that again, that maybe this is a good time to increase this, or is there any correlation there?
When I think about that, and I think about that a lot, we're all feeling this inflationary aberration that we're experiencing. But the fact of the matter is, since we last increased the minimum wage, costs have gone up annually, and wages have not kept up. And that is just a fact of the matter, and a fact of the matter that's going to happen the next year, and it's going to happen the year after that, and the year after that. I think that the pandemic has forced some market changes, kind of as you were mentioning, that, I stopped at Casey's up the street to grab a beverage, and I think that their sign said that they were hiring starting at $11 an hour. But $11 an hour still doesn't really pay rent for a 2-bedroom apartment or home and, adequately feed and clothe a family. And so while I think we've seen slight improvements, but we also have to remain competitive. And I think we're seeing that a lot. And Jackie mentioned that, with, seeing what Walmart was doing with their wages and what their employees were paying, and that competitive advantage. We need to make sure that we're attracting Nebraska. We can't continue to have out-migration of our workforce and be able to sustain. And I think that that's an important part of ensuring that wages are keeping up with the cost of living. Yeah.
I also think it's interesting that it talks about companies being forced to increase automation, but it hasn't even passed, and that's already happening for the past 3 years. So how long can people use the same argument when it's already happening?
I can't say it any better than you just did, which was talking about the automation issue, that this will force businesses to use automation, which we've already been seeing for years and years. Yeah, I'm seeing it in my grocery stores and other places I shop as well. Any other questions? This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much again. I've been super happy to be here.
Thank you.
Again, we'd like to thank both of our speakers. We did reach out to 2 economists to try to get some more statistical information. And we had reached out to a couple of other business owners, but we were very happy that we had 2 people accept our invitation to come and speak. As League of Women Voters, we do like to try to give a lot of varieties of information and information from all sides. So thank you very much for coming. We appreciate you being here.